everybody for attending. I know it's kind of early on a Saturday morning. As she said, I'm an allergist here in town, and I've been participating in these screenings over 10 years. And usually we've used them all. We've used Westdale Mall as well. The main idea or the main goal behind the screening is really not to diagnose you with asthma, but to determine whether you need maybe further treatment or help towards that direction, and whether you might be at risk for asthma. In the United States, we have about 22 million people who have asthma, and 6.5 million of these are children. The exact cause of asthma is not really known, and it can occur at any age as well. You might notice that you might have like a cough at night, or a tight feeling in your chest, like when you climb stairs, or you might be just cutting back on your activities, whether it's just like riding your bike or walking or jogging. Sometimes people have an occasional problem just taking a good deep breath. So these are kind of symptoms that we look for in determining whether you might have asthma. An asthma attack is often triggered by allergens such as pollen, dust, animal dander. Even certain medications like aspirin can trigger asthma. Once we diagnose asthma, then usually medical experts are able to treat asthma aggressively by allergen avoidance as well as medications. There's inflammation in the lungs and airways that really play a critical role in the development of asthma as well. So asthma usually occurs when the linings of the airways become inflamed and swollen. And there's also smooth muscle around those bronchial tubes that constrict as well, so we get those symptoms. An asthma attack might be characterized by difficulty breathing, you might have a tight feeling in your chest, or you might just have a cough as well. It can really develop quickly, or your symptoms can develop quickly, and it varies in severity. You might, again, just have a mild cough, or it can be so severe and you have an asthma attack. So who do we know gets asthma? Well, we know asthma can occur at any age. I've seen them in young kids as well as older adults in their 60s and 70s for the first time being diagnosed with asthma. Again, we don't really know the cause of asthma, but it does tend to run in families. In children, we tend to see boys more affected by asthma more than girls, and then towards adolescence it kind of equals out, and then into adulthood we do see more women affected by asthma than men. So during this screening, we just have again, a registration form, and then followed by that, when you go into the screening room, there is a 20-question kind of a life quality test that'll help us determine whether you might have signs or symptoms of asthma. And then followed by that, you'll be doing a pulmonary function test, and again, that just kind of helps us determine whether you might be at risk for asthma and whether you need to get further help. So really the process should be pretty painless as far as doing all the screenings and things, and again, it's just mainly to kind of determine whether you might need further evaluation. So I'm not going to go into detail about asthma. We do, I'm the chairperson of the Lynn County Asthma Reduction Coalition, and usually we'll have asthma conferences periodically as well, and those have more information on asthma. I know this is pretty informal, and I don't know if anybody has any questions for me before Ruby talks about triggers.
Sure, I actually have a question. Can you tell me exercise-induced asthma? When my daughter was playing soccer, she used an inhaler for a while. Is that something they just, can you give us some background on that?
A lot of people are triggered by exercise. It kind of triggers the airways to kind of constrict, and they might have symptoms, maybe just with exercise. Other triggers, can be cold air, or if you get a cold or viral infection. Irritants in the air, like tobacco smoke, certainly can trigger asthma as well. So it's hard to, and it really doesn't, again, some kids are affected by that, and it's not really something that runs in families necessarily, but
And sometimes they outgrow it then?
It can become better, but actually once you're really diagnosed with asthma, it can become better. Some people go into remission maybe for a couple of years, maybe even 15 years, but sometimes it will come back as well.
Do you often actually
do allergy tests to determine why someone's having asthma?
Yes. For us in the allergy clinic, a lot of times it's an allergen that can trigger asthma. So we do allergy skin testing.
Which typical, that's the norm for not.
Pretty much. I'd say about 90% of the time we do skin testing. There might be a patient maybe who has been tested before or knows their triggers, but our goal really is to help identify those triggers, and usually skin testing helps. All right, thank you.
I'm going to define what we're looking at in public health from a health perspective and a community health perspective. And that's, first of all, is we looked at indoor air quality and asthma, because that's what we're concerned about, is indoor air quality. And we know that people spend about 70 to 90% of their time in an indoor environment versus outdoor. And we know that indoor contaminants are generally 2 to 5 times higher indoors than they are outdoors. So that's why we're looking at that indoor environment and what's going on, is people spend their time there, and our contaminants are high. Asthma is expensive, very, very expensive. The Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America estimates that it costs about $900 per person per year for direct and indirect costs. So when you look at Iowa, that's, I don't even know if I can say this, $174 billion is what it costs Iowa in direct and indirect. When you take it and you look at Lake County, we're estimating it's, and this is very rough math, almost over $12 million, $12.5 million costs us. Again, asthma is a national problem. When you look at Lane County, according to the Behavioral Risk Surveillance Factor System, Lane County, 9% of our adults have been told they have asthma. This is higher than the state rate of 7.8%, and it's also higher than comparable metropolitan statistical areas that are similar to Cedar Rapids in our size. So just to kind of give you an idea of where we are in Lane County, we're higher than Polk County, Dubuque County, and some of those other areas that they monitor, and then we're also higher than the state rate. To make the with our asthma program at Lane County Public Health, we respond currently to children that have asthma, and we'll go out and we do a home assessment. And when we do a home assessment, we see different types of issues that we're looking at depending on the age and the structure of the house. And when we look at new home construction, what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of ventilation issues. And when you don't have a lot of fresh air, that makes it hard to breathe, because when you don't have fresh air, we're seeing a buildup of contaminants. And back in the 1970s, we went through an energy crisis, the United States did, and that's when our building practices started changing. We started making our houses very energy efficient, and we started making them tight. And there's nothing wrong with having a tight house, but we need to make sure we're having adequate ventilation. And so what we would see is high levels of carbon dioxide, which is what we exhale. And we also saw those levels coming out of sump pumps, including radon and some other soil gases, and some open sump pumps are full of organic material. That's the air underneath your foundation. Does everybody on the same page with me, or am I talking too fast and going too? Okay, I just want to make sure everybody's understanding what I'm saying. So when we get into a newer home, those are the type of things that we see. Now, what happens if you don't have ventilation? If you don't have proper ventilation? If you don't have proper air, aside from the buildup of contaminants like dust mites and allergens and those types of things. You typically don't have a lot of airflow. You get stagnant, stale air. And so then in certain areas you can create ecosystems, a whole little ecosystem in your house. And that ecosystem could be an environment to support mold growth. So I don't know how many people have actually taken furniture away from their wall and have seen, mold back in a corner because there wasn't, airflow back in there. That also might be a condensation issue too. When we get into our newer homes or our older homes, a lot of what our asthma recommendations and asthma triggers that we see is resulted to housing maintenance and also cleanliness, because with best practices with asthma, you need to clean weekly, including HEPA vacuuming weekly, and also washing and drying your bedding weekly that you sleep on. So we're seeing that as a very component that is lacking in some of our lower income housing areas. To kind of give you, I guess, an idea of some of the specific things we look at, mold, obviously mold is an asthma trigger. The only way to control mold is to control moisture, period. Bottom line is the hard part is finding the moisture and where it's coming in at and how to control that. So that's the hard part. But mold is abundant in our environment. It's floating around. We're breathing it in right now. And so we need to, again, the only way to control that is to control that moisture. Dust mites, does everybody know what a dust mite is? Okay, they eat our dead skin, and dust mites are only biological agent that I'm aware of that is known to actually cause, or is there's an association of a causal relationship between dust mites and causing asthma in sensitive individuals. And how do you address dust mites? Clean, wash in hot water, mattress encasements. Does everybody know what a VOC is? Volatile organic chemicals, volatile organic compounds. VOCs, a simple way to explain a VOC is the off-gassing or the odor. So if you have your Glade plug-in stuck in your wall and you walk into a room and you're like, oh, it smells so nice and pretty in there, what do you breathe in? Chemicals. Chemicals, look at the nice fresh smelling chemicals I'm inhaling into my lungs. These are asthma triggers. So what else has VOCs that's a hazard to us? Pesticides, cleaning chemicals. So when we're working with an asthmatic or we're working with a family, the lowest toxicity, the lowest type of chemical that you can possibly use, we promote vinegar. I recently tried vinegar and water and I cleaned my windows with it the other day because I said, I've been talking about this a lot and I'm going to try it. It works. It works very good. I can't believe I waited this long to try it. I'm a huge fan, and we also promote even just routine cleaning with dish soap or laundry detergent. You don't need these heavy, big chemicals in our home environment because that builds up, it binds with our dirt and our dust, and when we're sweeping it becomes airborne, and it's there. There's studies out there that these chemicals are found in our home environment. So the lowest toxicity chemical, the least amount that you have to use. So a soap is really all you need because you're looking for a surfactant to bind the dirt and remove it from the surface. And that's what a soap is a surfactant. So again, I kind of got off on a tangent there. VOCs, volatile organic compounds, these are pesticides, are cleaning compounds, Glade plugins. A lot of times we'll find people use the Glade plugins and those types of things, and they're covering up an odor like mildew. So then they have double whammy against their lungs. Pest allergens, the three big pest allergens that we're concerned about is cockroach, rodent, and I forgot the other one. Cockroach and rodent right now. And oh my gosh, I'm having a brain freeze now. Cockroach is the number one we are concerned about. This is a picture, this is in a home in Lynn County. This is frass. Frass is a fancy word for cockroach poop. So, and you can see right there that round piece, that is they're clean dishes in the extreme. And this family, what they were doing is they had been living in this environment for some time, and their practice was they went out and they got a bug bomb. And they set that bug bomb off, and it would knock down the population of the pests, and a couple weeks later, guess what? They're crawling back out because cockroaches harbor in walls. That's where they live, is walls. And bug bombs do not infiltrate the walls. All it does is knock down the population in the house, and then they breed again and they keep coming back. In this particular house, we found 2 to 3 inches of dead cockroaches in their ventilation system. So, and this was simply education. They just didn't know. We needed to educate them. With rodents as well. I'm sorry.
Oh, cockroaches live anywhere.
They do. Right, and this cockroach, this is a German cockroach, and they are known for sanitation. They are typically known to infest in the homes for sanitation. The best defense against that is trying to prevent them from coming in, and if you do your shopping where you're doing cardboard boxes, they like to glue in the cardboard boxes. So try not to bring those types of things in. I've had a personal experience with them. I was actually in a home, and I was in my I got into my own car, and about 2 weeks later, it was in the morning, and I went out and I was getting ready to go to work, and I got in my vehicle and I pulled my coffee tray out and I had 2 cockroaches just scattered, and it was in my car, and I was like, you know, it was eye-opening to me, and I had small kids, I had babies, and I didn't want to spray my vehicle with pesticides, and so I got some pheromone treatments, and I put all of my stuff in my trunk, and it was in the fall, and I waited until the winter time. And so I prevented them from, with the treatment, I prevented them from breeding, because I didn't want them to have babies in my car. And I put everything in my trunk, so that way it was isolated in there as best as it could, and then I let it freeze. And I let nature take its course. I will say there were times that I did see them run across my speedometer, and it was, you know, but that was my bad, because I didn't take proper precautions when I went into that home, and I knew that they were in there, and they had babies, so I'll put that on me. Rodent allergens are also a big concern. Rodents, everybody's familiar with mice. Well, we're the allergens. That's a big allergen or asthma trigger. Rodents pee when they run, and they leave their debris all over. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen a really bad rodent infestation, but typically, you know, rodents, they need water and they need food. So again, that's a sanitation. And I've had my, you know, everybody gets a mouse in their house once in a while, but I'm talking about the severe infestations where you see them running or you hear them crawling in the walls. And typically mice will run along what they call runs, run along baseboards. So a lot of times you'll see greasy streaks, greasy marks, and if that's the case that you're seeing and you suspect that you have mice, and then you'll see the feces associated with that, that would be a key thing to look for mice. And then you would want to make sure that you trap accordingly, either a snap trap or even sticky traps would be effective for those. Pet allergens, dogs and cats. Cat is one of the most prevalent allergens that it just does not break down. We have done some cat testing or in a home environment where we sampled the carpet. And in this particular house I'm thinking of is they did have an allergen to cats, and they lived in the house 2 years. They didn't know how the previous owner had lived, but apparently we found cat allergen there. So we're assuming that at some point in time they had to have had a cat in there, but this is 2 years down the road. 2 years and it's still impacting them. This is a particular concern. All of these issues are concerns, especially in our rental areas where you don't know, you know, who lived there before you and how they lived. And so, you know, when you talk about people at most risk, our children are at most risk, especially in our urban, crowded, unclean environments. And when they move into from one house to one house to the next house to the next house, they don't know what they're being exposed to. And then ETS, does everybody know what ETS is? Environmental tobacco smoke, secondhand smoke. That's, yep, a fancy word for saying passive smoke, secondhand smoke. In our world, we call it ETS, environmental tobacco smoke. Currently, Lynn County Public Health, we are working on we will be working with the landlords in developing policies for landlords who would choose to do smoke-free housing. So at least we're trying to make that option available for people who do have respiratory issues, that they need to start choosing smoke-free housing. And the simple fact is these are contaminants, these are chemicals, and they transfer from one unit to another. Cannot tell me that the housing, that they're airtight, even in common areas. So even from one floor down to the next, especially when you're dealing with preferential differences, you know, between hot and cold, that's the way the air flows. So environmental tobacco smoke is a big one. I'm not going to go into all of that because we've been bombarded as a society the last couple years about it. But you know, number one, it's a contaminant. We know that contaminants are 2 to 5 times higher indoors than outdoors. And we know people spend time in their house. What else is environmental tobacco smoke related to? Lung cancer. Lung cancer. Here's our lung cancer map. There's Cedar Rapids right there. It's a big red dot in the state of Iowa. So, does anybody have any questions or have any personal experiences they want to share or talk about? I'd be happy to.
I'd like to ask about termite control.
Okay.
Chemicals that they pump into outside your house.
Okay.
And when they do the initial treatment, they bore through the concrete and put the chemical down.
Okay.
Then they seal it up with concrete.
Okay.
What about that chemical that they use? Is that anything that can...
All chemicals need to be handled with respect. And the EPA, any kind of pesticide that's used in the United States should have a EPA registered number. It should be tested by the EPA. And it is in violation of EPA law to use that pesticide in a manner that is inconsistent with the labeling. Okay? So those pesticide applicators in Iowa, you have to be a certified pesticide applicator. You have to be licensed to do that, and they have to follow those instructions explicitly on that label. And to give you an example, we worked on a case where a family purchased a home and they had a terrible odor in their home and they thought it was cat odor, and the family ended up pulling professional cleaning people in, and they said, well, this smells like chemical. And come to find out, make a very long story short, come to find out that the previous owners had been applying a chemical inside that house chronically for the last 5 to 10 years. It explicitly said on the pesticide label for outdoor use only. And when it says that, that means in this particular case is outdoor use only because that chemical was only tested in an outdoor environment. It breaks down via the sun, it breaks down via the soil, the earth, the water. Those are all the components that breaks that chemical down. When you applied that chemical, that chemical was applied in the house, in the indoor environment, it didn't see the sun, it didn't see the dirt and the earth, it didn't see the groundwater, it didn't break down, it's still there. In fact, the house is posted and is vacant. And the legal outcome is still yet to be established. And that involved a multi-agency approach actually between Public Health, Department of Public Health, EPA, and ATSDR. So, any other questions?
The asthma rates were up. Is the asthma rates up in Lynn County, is that incidence higher since the flood, or is it pretty consistent?
I don't have that information. I don't know. I looked at the behavioral risk factor surveillance system, and I looked for 2010. And so I compared it from 2010, Lynn County compared at a state level compared to similar metropolitan statistical areas. I don't know that trend data, but that's a very good question. So I don't know that off the top of my head.
Ruby, you mentioned ductwork when you were talking about cockroaches, I think. What do you feel about cleaning ductwork? Because we've never done it, but things I've read said it's not worth the money. That 5 minutes later, they're going to be dirty again anyway.
Yeah, well, a lot of time that ductwork, it's crusted on there, some of the stuff in there. The EPA says you should consider cleaning your ducts if you see visible debris coming out, so when they're on and you're seeing stuff floating out. If you have mold in your ducts, so if they've gotten wet, and or if you have rodent or cockroach type contaminants inside there. And I would be more than happy to forward you that document, even if you guys have an email address. Everybody is welcome to contact us at Public Health, ask these specific questions. We have resources to all of these types of things. So guidance documents from the EPA, even how to address mold safely, how to clean your ducts, when to clean them, what to look for, all that type of thing.
What do you recommend for furnace filters? Just because I have respiratory issues and we're pretty careful about changing our filters pretty regularly, but are there some filters better than others?
Never less than an 8 as the general standard, a MER value of 8. As a general recommendation, we usually recommend at least an 8 or an 11. So, yeah, you start getting about in the 16s and the 17s with those types of values, that's getting up there to HEPA type filtration. And that makes your furnace work very, very hard. So that causes long-term maintenance issues down the road potentially.